Massive stones frame the rising sun at Stonehenge with impossible accuracy. This was not a matter of chance, but the signature of ancient builders who learned to read the language of the cosmos. By watching this video, you will learn how civilizations across the globe mastered rock, water, and sunlight to build the world's first intricate calendars and cosmic observatories. How did they design structures to capture a single beam of light once a year? And why did they trust flowing water to measure the hours? What does it say about us that we have lost this intimate conversation with the sky? Generations of sky watchers patiently tracked the slow dance of the stars, their entire lives a single day to point in a vast celestial record. For these ancient minds, time was not a number on a page, but the very rhythm of existence, a force felt in the cool solidity of stone, the relentless journey of a river, and the sun's warming touch on a winter morning. They came to understand that the universe was not silent, but spoke in cycles. The challenge then became how to translate that cosmic language into something their communities could see and use every day. This was the birth of a philosophy where the environment was not a backdrop, but an active partner in the art of timekeeping. In Mesopotamia, the annual flooding of the rivers signaled the moment to plant. In the Americas, the sun's position against a specific mountain peak marked the days for ceremony and harvest. This deep connection wove the measurement of time directly into the fabric of cultural identity, making it as essential as food and shelter. It was a holistic view of the world, one where human life was synchronized with the grand, turning gears of the cosmos. This fundamental mindset, this desire to find order in the heavens above, fueled incredible innovations. The tools they would create were not cold, mechanical devices, but living extensions of the landscape itself. So how did they turn rock, water, and light into the world's first reliable clocks? The story begins with the most permanent and patient of these elements, stone. Stone was the perfect medium for a message meant to last forever. Its permanence offered a fixed stage upon which the moving lights of the sky could perform their annual dances. To walk among the standing stones of Karnak in France is to walk through a frozen orchestra of granite, each monolith positioned to catch the first golden ray of the summer solstice sunrise. These were not random placements. Ancient builders possessed a profound understanding of geology, selecting stones not only for their strength but for their unique properties. Some rocks resonated with specific acoustic tones when struck, used in ceremonies to mark sacred moments. Others, rich in magnetic minerals, may have served as natural compasses, aligning the builders to the Earth's own invisible currents. This deep knowledge transformed quarries into workshops and landscapes into celestial observatories. At Machu Picchu, the Incas masterfully integrated the natural world into their designs. They chose andesite stone not just for its durability, but for the way its natural fissures and contours could be harnessed. During an equinox, a single beam of sunlight would slide through a precisely carved window or along a ceremonial stone, a fleeting event that marked a day of perfect balance. For cultures like the Inca, stone was not inert. It was alive, holding a life force or spirit, making these constructions not just scientific instruments but deeply spiritual places, a conversation between humanity and the living earth. The sheer effort involved speaks to their commitment. Without modern tools, they devised ingenious methods to quarry, transport over miles, and erect these colossal stones. They used water to expand cracks in bedrock, rolled logs as primitive wheels, and shaped surfaces with nothing but harder stone and patient abrasion. Each monolith raised was a testament to a collective desire to create a legacy, a permanent mark that said, "We were here and we understood the turning of the world." This reliance on the eternal nature of rock shows a civilization building for the future, creating markers that would guide generations they would never meet. But what about civilizations that lacked abundant stone, or those who sought to measure time in smaller, more fluid increments? Their genius lay in harnessing an element that was constantly in motion. Sunlight became a blade of precision in the hands of these ancient architects. Picture a beam of dawn light cutting through a narrow temple corridor, finding its way to a hidden inner chamber that remains in shadow for all but one day of the year. This was solar geometry in its most elegant form, a way of using the sun's predictable path to carve time itself into stone. From the sprawling complexes of Egypt to the high deserts of the Americas, builders designed structures to capture the sun's rays at the most critical moments of its annual journey, the solstices and equinoxes. These were not just pretty light shows, they were the world's most reliable calendars, built to last for centuries. At Chaco Canyon in the American Southwest, a remarkable feature known as the sun dagger perfectly illustrates this principle. High on a canyon wall, a rock slab is positioned so that slivers of sunlight pass through it. On the summer solstice, these slivers converge to form a single, sharp dagger of light that pierces the center of a spiral petroglyph carved into the rock face behind it. It is a moment of breathtaking accuracy, a yearly event that marked the peak of the sun's power for the ancestral Puebloan people. Far across the world, in the rock-cut temples of Abu Simbel in Egypt, a similar phenomenon occurs. Twice a year, the rising sun aligns with the temple's entrance, and its light travels over 200 feet through the mountain to illuminate the statues of three gods and the pharaoh Ramses himself, seated in the sacred innermost sanctuary. Achieving these alignments required a deep understanding of solar declination, which is the sun's position north or south of the equator, and a masterful grasp of local topography. Builders acted as both astronomers and surveyors, using shadow-casting pillars and carefully oriented windows or doorways to transform entire buildings into precise celestial instruments. The light that entered was not random, it was a calculated event, a confirmation that the cosmic order was intact. For the rulers and priests of these societies, this control over sunlight was more than just technical prowess, it was a powerful statement. By demonstrating a unique connection to the cosmos, they reinforced their own authority, showing the people that their leadership was sanctioned by the very forces that governed life, the seasons, and time itself. When we decode these solar geometries, we are learning to read a universal language written in light. This language dictated when to plant crops, when to harvest, and when to hold the most important ceremonies, synchronizing entire communities with the rhythm of the heavens. It was a system of remarkable clarity and power, yet it relied solely on the sun. But what happened when the sun set and the sky was ruled by a softer, more variable light? The moon offered its own, more complex cycle for those who learned to watch its subtle, silvery clock. While the sun offered a steady, daily rhythm, the moon introduced a more complex, monthly cadence. Its silvery light governed the night, dictating the best times for hunting, fishing, and holding ceremonies that required the cover of darkness. Ancient communities watched the moon's face intently, from its first slender crescent to its full, glowing orb and back again. This 29.5-day cycle became a fundamental unit of time, but integrating it with the solar year presented a fascinating mathematical puzzle. A year is not made of 12 perfect lunar months, creating a mismatch that would slowly push the seasons out of alignment over time. The builder's solution was architectural genius, embedding the necessary corrections right into the landscape itself. In places like the Callanish stones of Scotland, we see this long-term lunar clock in action. The great stone circles are arranged to frame the moon at its most extreme rising and setting points, events that only occur every 18.6 years. This long cycle, known as the lunar standstill, would have been a momentous occasion, a celestial event that validated generations of careful observation. This was not just about marking a single night, it was about proving that humanity could comprehend and predict the grand, slow rhythms of the cosmos. Other cultures developed even more intricate dual systems. The ancient Maya, for example, maintained a precise lunar count alongside their famed solar calendar. They tracked the moon's phases with such accuracy that they could predict eclipses, and they carefully interwove these lunar observations into the very layout of their ceremonial centers. To keep their lunar and solar calendars in sync, they periodically inserted extra days or even an entire month, a practice known as intercalation. This ensured that their rituals and agricultural cycles remained locked to the correct seasons, year after year, century after century. Observing the moon's subtle movements required different tools than those used for the brilliant sun. Since moonlight is far softer, builders devised clever methods to amplify its signal. Some cultures used still pools of water as natural mirrors, the reflective surface creating a second, clearer image of the moon's position against key stones or markings. Others may have used highly polished slabs of obsidian or other reflective stone to catch and redirect the faint light, turning a simple rock into a precise observational instrument. This celestial partnership between the steady sun and the wandering moon gave ancient societies a complete and versatile timekeeping system. One measured the relentless march of the year, while the other divided it into manageable, meaningful months. Together, they created a harmony between the heavens and human life. But what about measuring time on a smaller scale within the day itself? For that, builders turned to an element that was always in motion, finding a way to make the very flow of water mark the passage of the hours. Water offered a different kind of time, one that flowed rather than stood still. In the bustling markets and solemn courts of the ancient world, the steady drip of a water clock marked the hours with a gentle, relentless rhythm. These devices, known as clepsydry, turn the predictable nature of liquid flow into a universal measure. A simple bowl with a small hole, placed in a larger container of water, would sink at a fixed rate, its rim marking lines that indicated the passing hours. But this basic principle evolved into astonishing mechanical artistry. In ancient China and the Hellenistic world, engineers built complex water clocks with gear trains, escapements, and automata that rang bells or moved figurines to announce the time. These were not just timers, they were theatrical demonstrations of human ingenuity, proving that even something as fluid as water could be harnessed to impose order on the day. This innovation made time a public utility, accessible to merchants closing a deal, to judges limiting a speech in court, or to priests beginning a ceremony at the appointed moment. Time was no longer locked in the distant stars but was brought down to earth, measurable by anyone who could watch a water level fall. This mastery of water extended beyond the clockwork into the very landscape. In the immense stepwells of India, like the breathtaking Chand Bayori with its 3,500 steps, the architecture itself became a giant calendar. As the seasons turned and water levels slowly receded, new steps were revealed. A community could visually track the progression from the abundance of the monsoon to the scarcity of the dry season, their entire annual rhythm mapped onto the submerged staircase. Similarly, Roman engineers integrated timing into their magnificent aqueducts, using carefully calibrated sluice gates and outlet pipes to allocate specific time shares of water to different farms or city districts. This required a profound, practical understanding of volume and flow rate, ensuring a fair distribution of this vital resource based on a measured passage of time. The material of the clock mattered as much as its design. Artisans calibrated their devices using locally available clay, stone, or bronze, knowing that the smoothness of the outlet hole or the porosity of the container could change the speed of the flow. Every water clock was a delicate balance of physics and craft, a temporary vessel capturing a permanent truth that time, like a river, never stops moving. This fluid approach to timekeeping stands in beautiful contrast to the solid, eternal alignments of stone. Where megaliths captured the grand, celestial year, water clocks measured the intimate, human hour. One was a shout to the cosmos, the other a whisper in the daily life of a community. Yet the ultimate ambition of the ancient builders was to unite these elements, to create a system where the steady flow of water and the precise angle of sunlight worked in harmony. This synthesis would produce the most sophisticated timekeeping instruments the ancient world had ever seen. The ultimate ambition was to create a unified system, a single instrument that could speak with the voices of both the sun and the water. This vision gave rise to hybrid timepieces, where the sharp, silent geometry of a shadow would intersect with the constant, fluid motion of a channel. In a sunlit courtyard, an obelisk's dark finger might sweep across calibrated marks on the ground, while a regulated stream of water filled a basin to a matching line. This was timekeeping in stereo, cross-referencing the heavens with the earth to correct for the subtle seasonal variations that could throw a purely solar or hydraulic clock out of alignment. The Maya achieved a stunning synthesis of this kind at Chichen Itza. During the equinoxes, the pyramid of Kukulkan becomes a cosmic stage. The setting sun casts triangular shadows down the northern staircase, creating the undulating body of a feathered serpent that appears to slither from the heavens to the earth. This solar event, a masterpiece of architectural astronomy, was mirrored in the sacred cenotes, the natural wells that provided water for the city. The same celestial event reflected in the still, dark water below, offering a dual verification of this pivotal moment in the agricultural year. This synergy was not just about redundancy, it was about creating a more resilient and reliable system. A cloudy day might obscure the sun, but the water clock in the temple would still be flowing. A shift in a water channel's flow rate could be checked and corrected against the next solstice sunrise. By merging these two streams of data, ancient builders minimized errors and achieved a level of precision that was greater than the sum of its parts. This integrated philosophy extended far beyond grand pyramids. In the Persian garden tradition, the entire landscape was a timekeeping and life-giving machine. These gardens were laid out on precise north-south and east-west axes, their long, narrow water channels aligned to capture the sun's rays. The movement of shadows across these channels helped regulate the irrigation cycles, ensuring that water reached different sections of the garden at the optimal times of day and year. In Egypt, the Nilometer was another brilliant fusion. These structures were stepped wells or columns built into the riverbank of the Nile, used to measure the river's annual flood height. But their purpose was deeply tied to celestial time. Priests would correlate the rising water level with the heliacal rising of the star Sirius, an event that heralded the coming flood. The Nilometer was, in essence, a device that translated a celestial signal into a hydraulic measurement, which in turn dictated the entire agricultural and ceremonial calendar of the kingdom. This merging of sunlight and water created a nuanced and adaptive form of timekeeping. It acknowledged that the environment was not a static backdrop but a dynamic partner, and that by listening to multiple elements at once, a society could build a system that was robust enough to withstand the unexpected. The cosmic dance was now a conversation between earth, water, and sky. But to amplify this conversation, to make it resonate across a wider area, builders would turn once more to the most patient of all their collaborators, the living rock of the land itself. Deep within a stone chamber, the air itself feels different, carrying vibrations that seem to hum with ancient purpose. Here, time was not only seen but heard. The builders of these spaces understood that sound was a force that could be shaped by stone, creating an auditory dimension to their cosmic observations. In the immense passage tomb of Newgrange in Ireland, the corbelled stone roof does more than keep out the rain. Its precise, overlapping layers may have been designed to channel and focus specific sound frequencies. On a significant dawn like the winter solstice, a chant or a struck tone could resonate through the long passage, amplified by the architecture to mark the moment with a physical sensation of sound. This was acoustic chronometry, a way of using the properties of rock to turn echoes into a calendar. Some stones themselves were the instruments. Known as lithophones, these special rocks produce clear, musical tones when struck. A network of such stones placed strategically around a site could have functioned as a sophisticated alarm system. As the sun warmed the stones throughout the day, their internal temperatures would shift, subtly altering the pitch they produced when tapped. A priest or watchman moving through the complex could literally hear the time of day by the changing music of the rocks. This created a living, responsive clock built directly into the landscape. The interaction went even deeper. Researchers suggest that low-frequency sound waves from drums or chants might have been used to interact with stone alignments. The vibrations could help an observer fine-tune a solar sighting, perhaps by feeling the resonance peak when a standing stone was in perfect alignment with a rising star. In this multisensory world, hearing complemented sight, creating a richer, more reliable method of tracking celestial cycles. Time was a phenomenon to be felt in the bones as much as seen with the eyes. This auditory layer reveals a profound holistic understanding, where every human sense was engaged in the dialogue with the cosmos. The very stones were not silent monuments, but active participants in a symphony of time, their resonant voices guiding the community through the turning years. The grand hall of a temple becomes a cosmic mirror when every pillar and corridor is aligned to the sky. This architectural alchemy transformed static buildings into dynamic instruments, designed to capture celestial light at precise moments. The Pantheon in Rome stands as a breathtaking example, its massive dome crowned by a single circular opening, the oculus. This opening acts as a natural spotlight, allowing a beam of sunlight to travel across the vast interior floor throughout the day. The path of this light changes with the seasons, marking the solstices and equinoxes as it illuminates specific features of the rotunda. It is a building that breathes with the sun, a functional calendar carved from stone and space. To achieve this, builders employed principles of sacred geometry, using ratios like the golden section to harmonize their structures with the natural patterns they observed in the cosmos. These proportions were not arbitrary. They were believed to reflect a universal order, making the temple itself a spiritual portal to that higher reality. The very act of entering such a space was meant to align the individual with the rhythm of the heavens. The choice of materials was equally deliberate. In many temples, builders selected highly reflective limestone to line courtyards, amplifying the sun's brilliance. Elsewhere, they used translucent sheets of alabaster for windows, softening the harsh daylight into a divine, ethereal glow that marked sacred hours. Surveying these perfect orientations required astonishing skill with simple tools. Using a basic gnomon, a vertical stake in the ground, ancient engineers could track the sun's shadow throughout the year. They used sighting rods to establish true north and east, painstakingly aligning the entire foundation of a monument to an accuracy that still baffles modern surveyors. This was not just construction, it was a form of reverence, a way of weaving the celestial dance into the very fabric of daily life. The building itself became a clock, a calendar, and a compass all at once. It celebrated the predictable rhythm of the heavens, offering a tangible connection to the forces that govern the world. This deep integration of light and stone reveals a civilization that saw its architecture as a living bridge between the earth and the sky. Yet another element was waiting in the wings, one that could bring a similar, fluid transformation to the measurement of time. A jagged silhouette on the horizon was more than a landmark, it was a date on a farmer's calendar. Across the globe, ancient communities transformed their very landscapes into vast, open-air almanacs, using rock formations to signal the critical moments for planting and harvest. The Bighorn Medicine Wheel in Wyoming, a perfect circle of stones with cairns and spokes radiating outward, is a masterclass in this practice. Its key cairns align precisely with the rising and setting sun on the summer solstice, a clear, undeniable signal from the cosmos that the short growing season had reached its peak. This was not abstract astronomy, it was practical survival written in stone. Farmers from the British Isles to the high Andes did not just use these natural outcrops, they enhanced them, piling cairns or carving petroglyphs onto cliff faces to encode generational knowledge of local climate cycles. This wisdom was a blend of celestial observation and intimate environmental awareness. They knew that when the sun's shadow touched a specific notch in a distant rock, it was also the time that a certain plant would bloom, signaling that the soil was warm enough for seeds. This integration of sky, stone, and soil created a resilient and hyper-local agricultural calendar. Experts point out that these rock-based systems did more than ensure food security, they forged powerful community bonds. The entire village would watch for the solstice alignment, a shared event that synchronized the back-breaking labor of planting and the joyous celebration of the harvest. This collective rhythm, dictated by the silent testimony of the stones, wove the measurement of time directly into the social and economic fabric of life. The enduring power of this method lies in its elegant practicality, a calendar that needed no maintenance and could not be lost, only read by those who knew the land's language. But just as stone marked the grand turning of the seasons, another element offered its own, more fluid predictions for the year ahead. A spring's gentle flow could whisper the future of an entire season. In landscapes shaped by water, ancient observers noticed that the behavior of rivers, lakes, and aquifers followed reliable, repeating patterns. They learned to read these hydrological cycles as a living almanac, predicting the coming of floods or the threat of drought long before the skies gave any sign. This was timekeeping written in the language of water itself. In the Maya world, vast reservoirs known as aguadas were far more than simple storage pits. They were sophisticated seasonal indicators. As the rains arrived, the water level within these stone-lined basins would slowly climb, marking a visible line on the interior walls. The community could watch the water's ascent, knowing that when it reached a certain height, the time was right to prepare the fields for planting. This direct physical measurement synchronized their agricultural calendar with the actual availability of water, turning the reservoir into a giant, community-wide clock. The most famous example of this aquatic foresight comes from Egypt, where the life-giving pulse of the Nile was measured with breathtaking precision. The Nilometer, a structure of stone steps leading down into the river, was the kingdom's ultimate forecasting tool. Priests would meticulously record the river's rising level against carved markings, correlating the water height with the solar calendar and the appearance of key stars. A high reading promised fertile silt and abundant harvests, while a low one signaled lean times ahead. This was not mere observation, it was a science that integrated celestial events with terrestrial cycles, allowing the state to plan, tax, and store grain with remarkable efficiency. This deep knowledge was often woven into the fabric of myth and oral tradition. Stories of water deities and great floods were not just fanciful tales, they were powerful mnemonic devices, encoding generations of hydrological data into memorable narratives. A legend about a serpent dwelling in a spring might carry the crucial detail that when the serpent's rock was submerged by a certain date, the monsoon would be strong that year. This fusion of story and science ensured that vital survival information was preserved and passed down, accessible to everyone in the community. With these predictions, societies could manage their most precious resource with foresight. They built intricate canal systems and massive underground cisterns, storing water from times of abundance to see them through periods of scarcity. This proactive management, guided by the temporal signals of water, prevented famine and supported thriving trade networks as surplus crops could be reliably grown and transported. By listening to the rhythm of the water, these builders created resilient civilizations perfectly adapted to their environment. Yet, to confirm the predictions whispered by the springs and rivers, they would turn their eyes upward, using the unwavering certainty of sunlight to validate the more variable messages of the water. The daily life of a temple was choreographed by the sun's unwavering schedule. Within the sacred precincts dedicated to a solar deity, the first golden light of dawn was not just a visual spectacle, it was a divine summons. A priest would stand ready at a precisely cut window, awaiting the moment a single beam of light would strike the cult statue of the god, igniting the day's first ritual. This was timekeeping woven into the very fabric of worship, where measuring the hours was an act of reverence. For the Inca, the sun god Inti was the divine ancestor of the emperor himself, a living force whose journey across the sky demanded constant observation and tribute. Their entire empire was aligned to this belief, with corridors and towers in sites like Machu Picchu, designed to capture the sun at the solstices, the most critical moments of the solar year. Similarly, the Aztecs honored Huitzilopochtli, a god of sun and war whose strength was believed to need constant nourishment. The timing of offerings was not a matter of convenience, it was a cosmological necessity. A ceremony performed even a day late was thought to be ineffective, a failure that could jeopardize the very balance of the world. This spiritual imperative drove a relentless pursuit of accuracy. The Grand Pyramids became more than temples, they were functional instruments, their stairways and platforms angled to frame the sun on the equinox, turning an entire city into a stage for a divine performance. Scholars point out that these powerful myths gave abstract time a personality and a story. Instead of a confusing cycle of seasons, people understood the sun as a deity who was born, grew strong, aged, and was reborn each year. This narrative framework made the complex mechanics of the solar year relatable, transforming celestial observation from a dry science into a sacred drama in which every member of the community had a role. The responsibility of the priesthood was immense, their precise timekeeping ensuring the gods remained favorable, the rains would come, and the empire would prosper. This fusion of cosmic measurement and deep faith elevated the calendar keeper's role from a technician to a spiritual intermediary, binding the social order together under a shared celestial clock. This profound connection between divine narrative and daily practice was not unique to the sun, as a similar reverence flowed through the worship of water's life-giving power. A river's gentle current could carry the voice of a god. In countless cultures, the flow of water was not merely a physical process, but a divine signal, a sacred medium through which the will of the cosmos was communicated. Priests would gather at the water's edge, their eyes fixed not on the heavens but on the surface of a stream or a ceremonial basin, interpreting the dance of ripples and the play of light on the water as a celestial text. They believed these patterns revealed the most auspicious moments to begin a harvest, to crown a leader, or to conduct a marriage. This was timekeeping as an act of devotion, where the measurement of a moment was inseparable from the interpretation of a divine message. Great deities like the Hindu goddess Ganga, whose waters were believed to cleanse the soul and guide the passage to the afterlife, or the Greek titan Oceanus, who embodied the world-encircling river, were intrinsically linked to the cycles of time, the turning of seasons, and the rhythm of life and renewal. It is no surprise, then, that some of the most sophisticated water clocks were housed within temple walls. In these sacred spaces, the steady drip from one vessel to another did more than mark the hours. It regulated the entire cycle of daily prayers and offerings, ensuring that each ritual was performed at its divinely appointed time, synchronizing human devotion with the unwavering pulse of the universe. This sacred relationship with water manifested beautifully in the traditions of Shinto in Japan. At many shrines, a carefully directed stream of water, known as a temazuya, is provided for purification before prayer. The act of cleansing hands and mouth is not just about physical purity, but about marking a transition in time, a deliberate pause that separates the mundane world from the sacred moment. The constant, gentle sound of this flowing water serves as an auditory timer, its endless murmur a backdrop that measures the duration of meditation and ritual, grounding the spiritual experience in the natural world. Maintaining these sacred water features required a deep, intimate knowledge of local hydrology. Priests and community elders understood the seasonal variations in spring flow and rainfall, planning their major festivals around these aquatic cycles. They celebrated the life-giving power of water with joyous ceremonies at the start of the rainy season, and they honored its destructive potential with rites of appeasement during times of flood or drought. The water itself was the guest of honor at these festivals, its behavior dictating the calendar and connecting the daily life of the community directly to the sacred. By weaving the element of water so completely into their worship, these societies created a living, breathing calendar. Every drink from a well, every bath in a river, every offering made at a flowing stream became a subtle reminder of their place within a larger, divinely ordered cycle of time. This spiritual interplay between humanity and the elements finds a powerful echo in the way other cultures sanctified the unyielding rock of the earth, turning mountains and monoliths into altars for celestial observation. The ground beneath our feet was not just a foundation, it was a source of power. Across continents, ancient builders perceived the earth as a living body, crisscrossed by invisible pathways of energy they sought to harness. These terrestrial currents, sometimes called ley lines or dragon lines, were believed to connect sacred mountains, springs, and stone circles into a vast, pulsating network. A temple or a monolith was not placed arbitrarily. It was positioned like an acupuncture needle, carefully inserted at a point where the Earth's own rhythms were strongest, designed to amplify these forces in harmony with celestial cycles. This practice, known broadly as geomancy, was the art of reading the landscape as one might read a star chart. In China, the principles of feng shui guided masters to orient homes and tombs to the flow of Kai, the vital life force carried by wind and water. They selected sites protected by hills and nourished by streams, believing that a proper alignment with these terrestrial energies would bring prosperity and harmony, synchronizing human endeavors with the natural pulse of the land. Similarly, the Aboriginal concept of the dream time describes a sacred era when ancestral beings shaped the world, leaving behind a spiritual energy that saturates every rock and waterhole. Ceremonies were performed at specific locations along these dreaming tracks at precisely the right time of year, activating a connection to the ancestors and ensuring the continuing fertility of the land. This was timekeeping on a grand mythological scale, where the calendar was written directly into the topography. Some researchers have put forward the idea that many of these powerful sites sit atop geological fault lines or areas with unusual magnetic properties. The subtle electromagnetic fields or micro-vibrations from deep within the Earth might have been perceptible to sensitive individuals, making these locations feel inherently charged or different. A place like Stonehenge, positioned on a landscape crisscrossed with underground features, could have been chosen not just for its clear view of the sky, but for this enhanced terrestrial energy, creating a perfect confluence of earthly and cosmic power. This geomantic world, you required a profound, intuitive connection to the environment. The builders viewed the Earth as an active, willing partner in their quest to measure time. They listened to its whispers, felt its pulses, and designed their structures to resonate with them. This philosophy guided the precise orientation of tombs and temples to capture more than just light. They were aligned to channel the seasonal energies of the Earth itself. A tomb entrance might face the rising sun on the spring equinox, not only to mark the date, but to welcome a surge of revitalizing energy into the chamber for the soul within. This was a seamless blend of science and spirituality, where the practical need for a calendar merged with a deep, reverential belief in an animated world. The Earth itself was a temporal agent, its hidden energies ebbing and flowing with the turning year. To truly understand these ancient calendars, we must see them as dialogues, a conversation where the Earth spoke through its telluric forces and humanity answered with a lined stone. A single, sharp shadow cuts across a stone plaza, its dark edge a perfect pointer on a giant, open-air clock. This was the principle of the gnomon, a deceptively simple vertical rod that ancient civilizations transformed into a sophisticated timekeeping instrument. From the sun-baked courtyards of Egypt to the agoras of Greece, these shadow casters divided the day with a quiet, undeniable authority. The length and direction of the shadow told a dual story, marking not only the hour but the season itself. A long, stretched-out shadow in the winter spoke of the sun's low, weak arc, while a short, stout one at noon in summer signaled the peak of its power. This was a calendar and a clock fused into one elegant, silent measurement. The Egyptians refined this art to an astonishing degree, integrating it with their most vital concern, the Nile's annual flood. At sites like the Cairo Nilometer, priests used a calibrated gnomon to track the sun's altitude. The specific length of the shadow at a given time of year provided a predictive model, allowing them to forecast the coming floodwaters with enough lead time for the entire kingdom to prepare. This was timekeeping as a direct tool of survival, where a shadow's reach could determine the fate of the harvest. This basic technology evolved into intricate public sundials, often carved with complex curves and multiple faces to compensate for the sun's changing path through the year. Artisans inscribed these stone dials with lines for the seasonal hours and often adorned them with zodiac symbols, linking the daily passage of time to the grander cycles of the cosmos. Creating such a precise instrument required a deep understanding of local conditions. The builder had to know their exact latitude and account for the surrounding topography, ensuring the dial was perfectly leveled and oriented to true north. This knowledge gave rise to portable sundials for travelers, small enough to carry in a pouch, and immense fixed installations in city centers, making solar time a public utility. For the first time, the precise hour was not a secret held by priests in a secluded temple, but a fact available to any citizen who glanced at the central square. A merchant could close a deal at a mutually agreed time, a farmer could coordinate the watering of fields, and a laborer could know when the working day was done. This democratization of time fundamentally reshaped daily life, introducing a new layer of shared structure and punctuality to society. The silent, sweeping shadow of the obelisk and the humble gnomon brought cosmic order down to a human scale. Yet this elegant system had one inherent limitation: it fell silent when the sun disappeared. For a continuous, unbroken measure of time, day and night, these cultures needed to listen to another element, the gentle, relentless flow of water. The night sky offered its own map of time, a silent clockwork of drifting constellations. Ancient builders carved this celestial knowledge into the very rock beneath their feet, creating permanent observatories to track the stars. Across the vast Pacific, Polynesian navigators used star compasses, physical discs of stone or wood etched with precise bearings for key stars. By memorizing the rising and setting points of hundreds of celestial bodies, they could not only traverse thousands of miles of open ocean, but also mark the changing seasons from any island shore. This was a living science where the stars were fixed guides in a shifting world. In the Egyptian desert, the stone circle of Nabta Playa stands as one of the world's oldest known astronomical alignments. Its stones were carefully positioned to frame the heliacal rising of Sirius, the moment each year when the star first becomes visible just before dawn. This single event served as a brilliant alarm clock in the sky, signaling the imminent arrival of the Nile's life-giving floodwaters. Observing such a fleeting event required more than just a single night of watching. It demanded a tradition of observation maintained over generations. The true challenge lay in a phenomenon called precession, the slow, wobbling shift of the Earth's axis that causes the positions of the stars to drift over a cycle of 26,000 years. A star alignment that was perfect for one generation would be slightly off for the next. The builder's solution was to encode this long-term knowledge in the most durable materials they had, stone and story. The Dogon people of Mali, for instance, preserved a sophisticated understanding of the star system Sirius, including its invisible companion star, through intricate oral traditions and rock art. Their ceremonial drawings and recited genealogies acted as a living library, passing precise astronomical data from elder to youth across centuries without a single written word. This ensured that even as the stars themselves slowly migrated, the community's celestial calendar remained accurate. These nocturnal systems turned timekeeping into a continuous 24-hour practice. The sun governed the day, but the stars ruled the night, allowing for planning and ritual that extended beyond the sunset. Farmers could determine the optimal time for pre-dawn planting by the position of certain constellations, and priests could schedule ceremonies for the most spiritually potent hours of darkness. This integration of starlight with rock alignments represents a comprehensive worldview, one that sought to harmonize human activity with every rhythm of the cosmos. And just as still water could mirror the sun, it also offered a perfect, stable canvas for observing the shimmering patterns of the night. A still pool of water could hold the entire night sky in its dark embrace, offering a second, safer way to watch the heavens. Ancient astronomers mastered the use of reflective surfaces, turning calm lakes, ceremonial basins, and even polished slabs of obsidian into celestial mirrors. This was not merely about beauty, it was a profound technical innovation. By observing the reflection of a solar eclipse in water, they could track its progress without risking blindness from staring directly at the sun. This simple act transformed a dangerous event into a communal, educational experience, allowing entire villages to safely witness the sun's temporary disappearance and understand its place in the cosmic cycle. The Maya, for example, used their sacred cenotes as natural observatories. The dark, still water at the bottom of these deep natural wells provided a perfect canvas. They could watch the moon's phases glide across the water's surface, its reflection offering a clear, stable image that helped them precisely time their rituals and calendar corrections. The choice of material was critical. A still body of water provided a wide, communal viewing area, while a handheld mirror made of highly polished pyrite or obsidian gave an individual observer a brilliant, focused point of light to track. The goal was to avoid distortion, to find a surface so true it created a perfect duplicate of the sky. This often meant positioning these mirrors in conjunction with stone alignments. A specific notch between two standing stones might frame the reflection of a particular star in a pool below, cross-referencing the celestial event with a terrestrial marker for absolute certainty. This method of dual observation, watching both the sky and its reflection, significantly improved their accuracy. It was a form of ancient error checking, a way to confirm that what they were seeing was real and not a trick of the atmosphere. Experts suggest this reflective technique democratized cosmic knowledge. Instead of being a secret practice for a few elite priests, an eclipse reflected in a public reservoir became a shared lesson for the whole community, a moment of collective awe that reinforced their cultural understanding of time and the cosmos. This creative adaptation shows a deep intelligence, a willingness to use every available resource to deepen their dialogue with the universe. By borrowing the face of a pond or the sheen of a volcanic glass, they added a new layer of depth and safety to their timekeeping practices, proving that the most advanced technology was often a simple, clever application of nature's own gifts. This innovative use of mirrors represents a pivotal step, a move toward combining simple elements into something far greater, setting the stage for the grand-scale projects that would unite all these principles into a single, magnificent whole. The silence of a quarried stone was broken by the rhythmic thud of wooden mallets. Moving a 20-ton block from its birthplace to a sacred site was a feat of social engineering as much as physical strength. For the builders of Stonehenge, this meant hauling sarsen stones over 20 miles across the English landscape. They constructed sturdy wooden sledges, placing the massive stone atop this framework, and then used a system of ropes and human labor to pull it forward over a path of smooth logs that acted as rollers. As the sledge inched ahead, teams behind would constantly relocate the freed logs to the front, creating a continuous, rolling road. For even larger stones, some cultures harnessed the power of seasonal floods, floating blocks on rafts down river to their destination, a brilliant use of nature's own cycles to aid their cosmic construction. The iconic moai of Easter Island stand as a testament to a different, yet equally ingenious method. Researchers suggest these colossal statues were walked into position, rocked from side to side by teams using ropes in a careful, coordinated shuffle that made the stone figures appear to march across the island. This was not brute force but a nuanced understanding of balance and momentum, a slow dance that transformed the landscape. Once at the site, the true artistry began. To ensure these stones would cast clean, sharp shadows for generations, their surfaces needed to be meticulously shaped. Using nothing but harder river stones, artisans employed a technique called pecking, repeatedly striking the surface to slowly chip it away. This was followed by hours of grinding with sand and water to achieve a surprisingly smooth, almost polished finish. Such a surface was essential for the precise solar and lunar observations these monuments were designed to facilitate. A rough, irregular face would cast a blurred, ambiguous shadow, but a dressed stone provided a clear, definitive line against the ground, a perfect pointer for marking a solstice sunrise or a lunar standstill. Before a single stone was raised, the foundation had to be perfectly level. Builders dug long, shallow trenches and filled them with water, using the immutable property of water seeking its own level as a giant natural spirit level. By marking points of equal height along the trench, they could create a perfectly flat base for their cosmic clock. Erecting these monoliths was the final, most dangerous act of this grand project. For the great trilithons at Stonehenge, this likely involved digging a large ramp leading to a deep stone hole. The massive lintel stone would be dragged up the earthen ramp, while the two uprights were levered into position using timber. Then, with an immense coordinated effort, the lintel was inched forward until it rested securely atop the uprights, locking the celestial alignment into place. This entire process, from quarry to raising, was often synchronized with the very celestial events the structure was meant to mark. The community might have gathered to raise a keystone during a solstice, turning the engineering effort into a powerful ceremonial act that bound the people together under the sky they were learning to measure. This trial and error over generations led to profound innovations, revealing an intuitive grasp of physics. They understood leverage, the distribution of weight, and the properties of their local stone. The monumental scale of these projects, requiring the coordinated labor of hundreds, speaks to their foundational role in society. These were not vanity projects. They were the very heart of a community's identity, its calendar, and its connection to the cosmos. And in a beautiful symmetry, the very element that helped level their foundations, water, would also provide the next great leap in precision timekeeping. A city's lifeblood flowed through stone channels high above the streets, but these aqueducts carried more than just water, they carried time itself. Roman engineers designed these marvels with a dual purpose, delivering a vital resource while also regulating the daily rhythm of urban life. Their secret lay in calibrated outlet pipes and sluice gates, precisely engineered to release water into public fountains and baths at predetermined intervals. When a fountain in the Forum suddenly surged to life, it was not a random event. It was the city clock chiming the hour, a public announcement that marked the time for markets to open, for courts to convene, or for citizens to gather for their afternoon baths. This was timekeeping woven directly into the urban infrastructure, a constant, flowing reminder of order and civic management. The system's fairness was its genius. In the agricultural heartlands of Mesopotamia, a similar principle governed vast networks of irrigation canals. Gates along these waterways were opened and closed according to a strict schedule based on the solar calendar. A farmer downstream knew that on the third day after the summer solstice, his family's designated time's share of water would begin, ensuring every field received its fair allotment during the critical growing season. This prevented conflict and guaranteed the community's collective survival, turning the abstract measurement of time into a tangible, life-giving resource. Maintaining this temporal infrastructure required remarkable skill. Surveyors used simple but effective tools like the chorobates, a water-filled leveling table, to ensure the aqueducts maintained a consistent, gentle gradient for miles. Any deviation could slow the flow or cause destructive siltation, throwing off the carefully calibrated timing of the entire system. Maintenance schedules were not arbitrary, they were synchronized with celestial events. The annual cleaning of canals would commence after the heliacal rising of a specific star, a celestial signal that the dry season had arrived and the water levels were at their lowest. This integration meant the very work of preserving the water network was guided by the cosmic clock it helped to measure. By embedding timekeeping into their hydraulic engineering, these civilizations created a resilient duality. Water was both the resource being managed and the tool used to manage it. This seamless fusion supported dense urban populations and complex agricultural societies simultaneously, proving that time was not an abstract concept but a practical utility as essential as the water flowing through the channels. To refine this fluid measure, however, builders looked to the one force that could bring absolute precision to the variable flow, the unwavering path of the sun. Gold leaf once sheathed the inner walls of Coricancha, transforming the entire temple into a radiant sun even on cloudy days. This was more than decoration. It was a deliberate act of architectural alchemy, designed to capture and multiply the sun's life-giving energy. The precise angles of the walls and the strategic placement of reflective metals ensured that sunlight would penetrate deep into the sanctuary's heart, illuminating specific niches only on the solstices or equinoxes. At that moment, the building itself seemed to breathe with celestial fire, a physical proof of the Inca emperor's divine connection to the sun god Inti. This principle of heliology or sun worship shaped sacred architecture across the ancient world. In Mesopotamia, the massive ziggurat was a stairway climbing toward the sun deity, its terraced levels representing the different realms between earth and heaven. Each step upward was a spiritual ascent, bringing the priest closer to the cosmic source of light and order. In Mesoamerica, the Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan was precisely oriented to frame the setting sun on key dates, its immense volume a permanent prayer in stone. Builders did not simply work with stone, they worked with light itself. They embedded crystals of quartz or thin sheets of shimmering mica into walls and altars. When the sun struck these materials at the correct angle, the entire chamber would erupt in a shower of prismatic colors or a diffuse, heavenly glow, a spectacle that left no doubt about the deity's visible presence. This was theater on a divine scale, a merging of art, science, and statecraft. The ruler who commissioned such a temple was not just a king, he was the mediator between his people and the cosmic powers that governed time and fertility. By controlling the calendar and orchestrating these breathtaking solar events, he demonstrated that his authority was woven into the very fabric of the universe. The spiritual power of these sites ensured their endurance long after the empires that built them had faded. They remained places of pilgrimage and ceremony, their solar alignments still functioning, their stones whispering of a time when humanity measured its days by a dialogue with the heavens. This deep integration of faith and precision reveals a world where science was not separate from spirituality, but its essential expression. And just as sunlight was channeled to mark sacred time, the element of water was often woven directly into these solar centers, creating a complementary system where fluid motion met fixed light. The ocean's rhythm is written in stone along ancient coastlines. Walk the shore and you might find a series of notches carved into a sea cliff, or a staircase of steps leading into the water, each one a date on a calendar that measures the sea itself. For maritime societies, from the Pacific Islands to the fjords of Scandinavia, these tidal calendars were as vital as a farmer's almanac. They understood that the moon's gravitational pull orchestrated the tides, and by carefully observing the lunar phases, they could predict the crucial high and low water marks that dictated their daily survival. A specific notch might align with the highest tide of a full moon, signaling the only safe time for a large trading vessel to enter a narrow harbor. Another, lower marking could indicate the ideal moment to harvest shellfish from newly exposed rocks. This was timekeeping for a life lived on the water, a practical science carved directly into the landscape. The method itself was elegantly simple, relying on counting the days between lunar phases. They knew that from one new moon to the next was a cycle of approximately 29.5 days, and within that, the highest high tides and lowest low tides followed a predictable pattern. By placing a series of stones or carving markers at different heights on a prominent coastal rock, a community could create a permanent public chart. As the water level rose and fell each day, it would lap against a different marker, providing a visual, undeniable readout of the tidal stage. This allowed fishermen to plan their voyages around the strongest currents, and traders to coordinate their arrivals and departures with absolute precision, turning the uncertainty of the sea into a managed, predictable resource. This vital knowledge was too important to be left to chance or written records alone. To ensure it was passed down flawlessly through generations, many cultures encoded their tidal calendars into songs and rhythmic chants. A fisherman's melody might count the days from a neap tide to a spring tide, its verses holding the precise information needed to navigate a treacherous reef passage. These songs transformed a complex observational science into an unforgettable cultural expression, blending practical necessity with poetry and rhythm. The reliability of this system was the bedrock of maritime exploration. It gave navigators the confidence to set sail across vast distances, knowing they could predict the tidal conditions awaiting them at an unfamiliar island. This deep adaptation to the aquatic environment showcases a different facet of elemental time, one that listened to the pulse of the ocean with the same attentiveness that inland cultures gave to the sun. While coastal rocks measured the sea's breadth, other civilizations were perfecting ways to make water itself count the seconds in a more controlled, intimate space. Deep beneath the earth, a profound silence holds a different kind of time. In the sacred darkness of a cave or a hand-carved tunnel, ancient builders discovered that the earth itself could be a lens for the heavens above. The most famous example is Newgrange in Ireland, where a roof box was engineered with astonishing precision above the entrance. For just a few minutes at dawn on the winter solstice, a single, narrow beam of sunlight travels down a long, dark passageway to illuminate the central chamber, a dramatic event that marks the sun's symbolic rebirth at the year's darkest point. This was not a public spectacle, but a private, initiatory moment, likely witnessed by only a select few. Across the world, from the oracle chambers of ancient Greece to the kivas of the American Southwest, caves were modified to become secluded observatories. Builders would carve narrow shafts or windows that aligned with the rising or setting sun on a solstice or equinox, or they would use still, dark pools of water on the cave floor as perfect mirrors to reflect the positions of key stars. The constant, cool temperature and profound darkness of these underground spaces provided an ideal, stable environment. A water clock placed here would not lose liquid to evaporation under a hot sun, and an observer could measure star positions without the interference of moonlight or atmospheric haze. This hidden approach to timekeeping served multiple purposes. It preserved complex astronomical knowledge within a protected, esoteric tradition, away from the public eye. It also created a powerful sensory experience, where the sudden, brief invasion of sunlight into total darkness carried immense spiritual weight, marking a sacred date with an unforgettable physical shock. The very secrecy of these sites speaks to an advanced and deliberate understanding, a way of using the Earth's interior to filter out all distraction and focus solely on the cosmic signal. How did they manage to capture that fleeting beam of light with such accuracy from within the confines of solid rock? A single, brilliant idea could travel thousands of miles, carried not by armies but by merchants and scholars. Along the bustling Silk Road, a caravan master from Persia might share stories of a water clock he saw in a Babylonian court with a mathematician from the Indus Valley. In a port city on the Mediterranean, an Egyptian priest astronomer could barter his knowledge of solar geometry for a Greek sailor's star charts. This was a silent, global trade in time itself, where the most precious commodities were concepts, not spices or silk. The evidence for this exchange is written in the stones and manuscripts left behind. The division of the circle into 360 degrees, a concept that appears in both ancient Mesopotamia and in early Chinese astronomy, likely spread along these interconnected routes. Similarly, the idea of splitting the day and night into 12 hours each seems to have emerged independently in Egypt and Mesopotamia, yet the specific methods for measuring those hours, using water or shadow, began to appear in remarkably similar forms across vast distances. The Greek clepsydra, with its intricate gears and bells, almost certainly inspired later even more complex water clocks in China and the Islamic world, each culture adding its own layer of mechanical genius. This cross-pollination required more than just casual conversation. It demanded a special class of individuals, translators, and diplomats who could negotiate the exchange of astronomical data and construction techniques alongside trade agreements. These were the intellectual brokers of the ancient world, ensuring that a breakthrough in one civilization did not die there but could seed innovation in another. This global dialogue did not create carbon copies, however. Each culture acted as a filter, adapting foreign concepts to fit their own environment, materials, and spiritual beliefs. In the Islamic world, for example, this synthesis produced a unique hybrid. Scholars and architects operated using both a lunar calendar for religious observance and a solar calendar for agriculture and taxation. This dual need led to the creation of astrolabes and other instruments capable of tracking both celestial cycles, and it influenced the orientation of mosques and palaces to acknowledge both systems. The magnificent observatories built in cities like Marrakech and Samarkand became melting pots of global knowledge, where Chinese, Indian, Persian, and Greek astronomical texts were translated, compared, and refined. This was not plagiarism, but a creative adaptation, a process of taking a shared human discovery and weaving it into the local cultural fabric. Recognizing this interconnectedness profoundly changes our understanding of ancient ingenuity. It shows that the drive to measure time was a universal human quest, and that the greatest advances often came from collaboration across continents. The story is not one of isolated genius, but of a slow, collective conversation that spanned the globe, with each civilization adding its own voice to the chorus. This shared foundation of knowledge provided a common toolkit, but the final masterpiece, the specific calendar or clock, was always a product of its place, perfectly tailored to the sun, the water, and the stone of its homeland. A desert priest did not need a complex water clock when the sun was a constant companion. In arid landscapes where the sky is almost always clear, solar alignments became the dominant language of time. Builders in places like ancient Egypt oriented their temples with breathtaking precision, using the sun's predictable journey to mark the hours and seasons with absolute reliability. Conversely, in the dense rainforests of the Maya, the sun was often hidden by a thick canopy. There, timekeeping shifted to the rhythms of water and the stars. The Maya watched the water levels in their vast reservoirs rise and fall with the rains, and they used narrow gaps in the jungle roof to track the passage of specific constellations, turning celestial events into a calendar measured in rainfall and starlight. Each environment demanded a unique toolkit. Along foggy coasts where the sun and stars could be obscured for days, cultures turned to the tides, carving tidal calendars into coastal rocks to track the moon's pull on the sea. In the high Andes, communities observed the slow, seasonal retreat of glacier ice, reading the melt rate as a giant natural clock that predicted water availability for the coming months. Even in the frozen Arctic, the Inuit developed ingenious methods, using suspended ice crystals to refract the low sun into predictable patterns on the snow, marking the time of day even during the long polar twilight. This was not a one-size-fits-all science. It was a deeply pragmatic art of using what was immediately at hand. In Southeast Asia, this meant crafting intricate water clocks from abundant bamboo, while in Scotland, it meant using the local granite to build stone circles aligned to the moon's most extreme cycles. This flexibility was the key to their resilience. By weaving timekeeping directly into their local environment and survival strategies, these societies created systems that were robust, self-correcting, and perfectly adapted to their world. Their calendars were not imported but grown from the very land they lived on. This profound adaptability raises a compelling question for our own era of standardized global time. What wisdom might we regain by learning to read the unique temporal language of our own local landscapes once more? The 60-minute hour we use today is a direct inheritance from ancient Babylonian sky watchers. Their sophisticated base 60 system, chosen for its mathematical elegance in division, still governs how we count our seconds and degrees of a circle. This is not the only echo we live with. The Gregorian calendar that organizes our year is a refinement of earlier Roman solar reforms, an attempt to lock the human calendar more firmly to the celestial year. The legacy of these early timekeepers is woven into the very infrastructure of our modern world. Satellite navigation systems like GPS operate on principles that would be familiar to a Polynesian navigator, using the precise timing of signals from multiple points to triangulate a position, a direct descendant of stellar wayfinding. Our most advanced observatories still rely on the fundamental geometry of aligned sightlines, a concept perfected by builders who used stone to frame the stars. Even the growing field of environmental science looks to these ancient methods for wisdom, studying how cultures used water levels and solar alignments to create resilient, sustainable systems perfectly adapted to their local ecology. The water clocks of antiquity, with their regulated flow, were the direct precursors to the precise timing mechanisms used in the early modern laboratories of Galileo and Newton, helping to birth the scientific revolution. We are still studying sites like Stonehenge and Machu Picchu, not as ruins but as functional instruments, using laser scanning and satellite imagery to uncover new alignments and deepen our understanding of their celestial purpose. This enduring influence reveals a profound truth. Our modern conception of time, for all its digital precision, rests upon a foundation built from rock, water, and sunlight. These ancient methods remind us of a time when human rhythms were synchronized with the natural world, not isolated from it. They offer powerful lessons in holistic design and long-term sustainability for our own fast-paced, often disconnected era. By honoring this heritage, we begin to reclaim a more intimate and meaningful relationship with time itself, one that sees it not just as a number on a clock, but as a continuous dialogue with the cosmos. The true mastery of these ancient builders was not in using one element alone, but in weaving rock, water, and sunlight into a single, resilient tapestry of time. At the heart of a Mayan city, this triad was in perfect harmony. The solar pyramid cast its precise shadow, while the stone stelae recorded celestial cycles in enduring glyphs. Below, the vast reservoir, or aguada, mirrored the sky, its rising and falling water level providing a fluid counterpoint to the sun's fixed path. A cloudy day could not obscure the message of the water, and a shift in the reservoir's flow could be corrected against the next solstice sunrise. This was a system built with built-in cross-checks, a network of elemental witnesses that ensured the community's calendar remained accurate season after season, generation after generation. This holistic approach fostered a worldview where time was not a straight line racing toward an end, but a great turning wheel. Life, death, and rebirth were part of an eternal, interconnected cycle reflected in the art, religion, and governance of these cultures. Kings derived their authority from this cosmic order, priests orchestrated ceremonies to maintain its balance, and farmers planted their crops in rhythm with its pulse. The entire society moved in sync with a reality far greater than itself. By examining this elegant synthesis, we are not just looking at primitive technology, but at a highly sophisticated pre-modern science. Its principles of observing natural cycles, building in redundancy, and designing for resilience hold profound relevance for our contemporary challenges. In an era of climate change, their methods remind us to listen to the language of the environment, using long-term patterns rather than short-term gains to guide our decisions. And in our frantic race against the clock, their model offers an alternative, a way to reintegrate natural rhythms into our daily lives, transforming time from a master to be obeyed into a partner to be respected. This unity of rock, water, and light offers more than historical insight. It provides a powerful template for living in balance, a timeless wisdom waiting to be rediscovered. Our journey through these ancient chronometers reveals a truth far greater than mere technical skill. The true legacy of these builders is not found in the stone they quarried or the water they channeled, but in the profound dialogue they fostered with the cosmos itself. They listened to the universe and left behind answers carved in rock, written in light and flowing with water, creating a symphony of time where every element had a voice. This was not a primitive struggle for survival, but a sophisticated, holistic science that wove the human story directly into the fabric of the turning world. Their quest to understand celestial cycles was at its heart a timeless search for meaning, a way to chart our place within the vast, beautiful machinery of the universe. These enduring monuments and ingenious devices whisper an invitation to us across the centuries, encouraging us to slow our frantic pace and rediscover the natural rhythms that still pulse all around us. In their wisdom, we might just find the inspiration to build a future that is more balanced, more observant, and